Richard, hey, it's great to spend some time with you here today. I know we've been mutual followers of one another for some time, so this is great to finally come to fruition and dive in on something that's, I know, near and dear to both our hearts, something that we're super passionate about, which is brand. What does that mean? How do we define, embody, and live our brand? And why is it so important? And I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I know that this is something that you're very passionate about. You've spent some time working on this and you mentor folks on the topic. So would love to hear your thoughts today on the importance of brand.
Well, first of all, Carson, it's an honor for me to, I just absolutely love all of your content, and I can't wait for your new book to come out.
Thank you.
I can't wait for that. So, first of all, the whole thing has started for me years ago because I think brand is so important. You think back to when we were growing up, like Kellogg's or Kraft cheese, and those brands, you knew what it meant when they said that. And sometimes now all of that gets watered down. And I was having a conversation, much like you and I have been having, with one of my associates, one of my peers, and they were asking about where they were struggling at. And I said, well, what brand do you want to be known for? And this person started, like most of us would, mentioning all of this plethora of, well, I want to be faithful, I want to be accessible, I want to be dependable, and just all these stuff started coming out. And I said, whoa, time out. Boil all that down into just 3 words. Because you and I both know that the word priority used to mean 1 or 2 priorities, right? But now we say priorities. We've got 10 priorities. Nobody can have 10 priorities. So I asked this person I was mentoring, just boil it down for me. 3 words. And they said, well, golly, can I come back to you for this? And I said, absolutely. Because for me, I have my brand, I think, honed down into 3 words. I want to be known as a communicator. I want to be known as a leader for leaders and an encourager, period. And if anything doesn't necessarily fit into those 3 things, I feel like it's either A, waste of my time, or B, I'm not utilizing my gifts or what I bring to the table to full fruition. So it has taken me on this interesting journey of just asking people. Like if I ask Carson, what's your brand? What do you want to be known as? What would you say?
Yeah, that's a great question and very astute observation, Richard. You know, as far as from my vantage point, I think about a few different key components. For me, it was arriving at how do I feel like I can best serve and add value? And so for me, it was a communicator. And it was also an orchestrator, somebody who can build community around what we do. I realized a long time ago, thank goodness, I had an epiphany that I don't need to be, nor should I be, the smartest person in the room. But yet I can put the smart people in a room. So when I realized that I can be that orchestrator, be that facilitator, and put people together, that was the key. And the last would be collaborator. How can I best figure out what is the value that I bring to any given circumstance? I think our brand is a personification of the unique strengths and superpowers that we have that not only can bring us success in our day-to-day lives and career, but that we can also replicate and deliver wins for other people, everybody that we touch. That could be customers, that could be colleagues, that could be anyone that we touch in our lives, that we can utilize these skills in order to make their lives better. And the other key element that I would point out is that your brand can and will evolve over time. My life right now, my career right now looks nothing like it did a decade ago. I thought I had peaked in my career when I was a decade ago running a call center, and I would get up in front of hundreds of salespeople every day and deliver these Wolf of Wall Street type speeches.
Yes.
PG-13, albeit.
Yeah.
But giving these speeches, and I thought I was at the peak of my career. And now I get to train and present globally, on different topics like sales and leadership and career and culture. And so, I think the key element, Richard, is that it continues to evolve what it looks like. But at the heart, at the core is what can I do well and what can I do well enough to enrich the lives of others?
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying collaborator because I'm an outsider looking at you from LinkedIn and from some of the things I've seen you post. And I could watch your eyes even come to life as you said the word collaborator. So those things speak deep into who we are. Once you tap into that, all of a sudden that momentum and that mojo just starts flowing. If I can, I know you talk to a lot of sellers, right? So let me give you a sales example. I own a Jeep. I love Jeep. I think the Jeep brand is awesome. However, my wife and I are wanting to do some add-ons to our Jeep. So I called the Jeep dealer. They referred me to their parts department and gave me an email and a phone number of the person I needed to talk to. I both emailed and called. No phone call. About a week and a half later, I got an email that said, let me get back with you. And now we're about 3.5 weeks out. I still have not heard from this person. Now, I don't know them. They could be a genuinely great salesperson. They could be a great, they might have all kinds of Jeep awards on their shelf. But in my mind, as the customer, I have a perception of no follow-up, uncaring, no commitment to me, the customer. Now, that might not be the 3 words that that person on the other side of that phone or that email wants their brand to be. But guess what? As the customer, that's what I feel. And so I think since you and I are talking to sales folks, think about what your customers would say what your brand is. Once you hone this thing down that Carson and I are talking about brand, if you can hone it down to those 3 words you want to be known for, are you projecting those 3 words daily? I think that's the first question. But then secondly, as sellers, we have to really ask that tough question. How are you showing up to your customers with that brand?
Yes.
What does that look like? That's a dangerous path. Go ahead.
This is gold. First off, my oldest, who just turned 15, is a big Jeep fan. So got to watch out because she'll be on the road soon. But no, when you sum this up, like when I think about brand, I think about it from a couple of different lenses. So there is the sales component, right? So there's the brand that that I need to be known as in order to earn the right to be a trusted advisor for the clients that I wish to seek, right? So in doing that, the bar is raised now, Richard, like never before. Customers can and will research you. I mean, we've all read the statistics. They're 56, 57% down the buying journey. I mean, that's a challenger statistic before they engage a seller. They can and will research you and me and figure out like, hey, is this somebody I want to do business with? So you've got to make sure that you've created this brand as a thought leader, that you have a unique perspective on whatever it is that you're wishing to go into a collaborative relationship about. The other lens that I look at it from is from a career perspective. Your brand is your calling card, and perception is reality, whether fair or unfair. So
true.
People are from a variety of ways. They're going to get a perception of you, whether it's how you showed up or didn't show up on a project, what you post or don't post out on social media. All of these things will fuel into your brand. And so like even with a hiring manager, you want to make sure that you de-risk their decision. You have to become the obvious choice for a role, and that still doesn't mean you're going to get it. But you've got to be very intentional about the different mediums that you're going to establish your brand and leverage your brand. Do you like to blog? Are you comfortable with video? All of these things, like, don't just make a resume because everybody can do that. Oof. Make a video resume, make a career walking deck, utilize these things in order to engage. So it's not just about establishing your brand, but it's all the mediums that you can and are comfortable with using in order to personify your brand and convey that brand to the people that you want to be your audience.
Yeah, it's that perception is reality, that really, because it's in the science world, I think they call it empirical evidence, but the fancy word that we use in learning and development or diversity and inclusion is that confirmation bias. So people start confirming what they already think about you by gathering that evidence. So think about that as as you're developing your career journey or your relationship with a customer, what does that confirmation bias, what information are they gathering about you? I boil everything down. I certainly am not the smartest person in the room, never pretend to be, Carson. So I have to boil everything down to the simplest denominator. So we teach wait staff training like a lot of companies do. So when we teach wait staff training, we tell servers all the time that their tip, well, is it $20, $25, whatever the case may be, at least 50% of their tip is being formed in the minds of their customers within 15 seconds of how they approach the table, how they greet the table, how they start setting the table for that customer dining experience. Now, we're only talking about $25 or a $50 tip. In some of our sellers' world, we're talking about a $10,000 commission or a continuing commission check. So how much more is it important for us to really hone in on how we approach the table, what that brand of us says, what that looks like? So I think this topic, to your point, really can go deep as people start having a personal reflection about, what is my brand? Do I want to change my brand? Has it changed, to your perspective? Has my brand changed over the years? And how do I go back and maybe erase some branding that I've put into some customers' mind, or some of my associates, our inside folks? So many times we treat the outside folks, our customers, different than we treat our inside people. My goodness, we got to be careful with that.
Brand is a journey. And so what I love the most about what you said, Richard, is all of these key components that we could and should be contemplating as we think about the implications of brand. And so, like for instance, I've shared this with you. I'm just a small town guy from the Midwest US, right? And so over the last decade, I've somehow become known as the #1 social seller in all of tech. And it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't something I necessarily set out to do. I got a book published a decade ago because I reached out to almost 1,000 publishers and agents to send them a query letter about my book. I had 15 that offered to read it, 6 offered to publish it. I picked the one with the best distribution. My publisher said, you need to get out on all these social platforms. So I did, and I started following people that were following what I wanted to become, which was a leadership and sales writer, right? And so I started having meaningful conversations with them, creating and posting content. But again, none of this stuff happened overnight. And I've lost a lot. I've lost jobs. I've been laid off multiple times over the last 12 plus years.
Sure.
I've had scenarios where I didn't know what the next move was. But for me, it's been all about relationships. I was able to create a relationship early on, about a decade ago, because of the book that I wrote. It made me stand out. Then I made a relationship there that led me to my next role. And I made a relationship there that ultimately led me to the company I'm at today, one of the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah.
And over time, I've doubled down on some of the things that I highlighted earlier, building a community around what we do. On paper, I don't belong here. My background's not in technology, but what I'm good at is creating a community around what we do, trying to find ways to engage and stay top of mind, and understanding the resources. If you understand relationships and resources and you can deliver wins to the people that you work with and you collaborate with, that matters. And over time, I've been able to be very fortunate to build a body of work that has gotten me noticed for certain things. Several years ago, I was prospecting on LinkedIn, and people were like, Carson, he's prospecting on LinkedIn, whatever that means. Well, after multiple multi-million-dollar deals in 1 year that came about because of that, people started to take notice. They started to ask me to train smaller groups, got bigger groups across the country. Now it's global. And it's amazing over time. I think what's key is stay true to those 3 things that you highlighted, Richard. Stay true to those 3 things in everything that you do, and continue to just put one foot in front of the other. And the possibilities are endless. I've definitely been in places in my career where I didn't feel like I was doing anything of extreme value, or where I wasn't living my dreams and my passions. But if you find a way to infuse what matters to you and what gets you going and you're passionate about into what you do day to day, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, and if we have time, I've got one quick story that illustrates exactly what you're talking about. My brother used to collect eagles, little knickknacks, key rings, and things that he would put on. He had eagles everywhere. I was driving out 94 here. You're familiar with wine country out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was driving out through there, and I saw a bunch of carved out animals, raccoons, a bear, and an eagle. Like it had a 6-foot wingspan. I could not believe it. I whipped my car around. I thought, I might buy this for my brother. Well, I pulled up and I saw the price tag on it, Carson. I said, I don't love my brother. I don't love him enough to buy him this. I mean, it was beautiful. The feathers, the talons, everything about this, it looked so realistic, made out of wood, shined. It was beautiful. About that time, the chainsaw artist came out of the shed. He took off his hat, and I had to ask him. I said, man, how do you carve this beautiful eagle out of this stump? He had so many stumps in his yard right behind his woodshed. And he wiped his brow and he looked at me intently like he'd never had that question asked to him before. And I'll never forget it to this day. He said, I guess with this chainsaw, I carve away everything that doesn't look like an eagle. He turned around and walked away. For me, it was life-changing because that's what we're talking about. Your brand, whatever those 3 words are that folks are listening, your brand is those 3 words. And it's your job as a human being to start carving away everything that doesn't look like that and march forward into the possibilities of who you can be.
Mic drop. That's beautiful. I love that, Richard, because I think a lot of times we think about like, my goodness, where do I get started? You know, what should I do? And I always talk to people about, like, think about your desired and intended audience. We've covered a pretty wide array today, whether it's, you know, you're in customer facing roles or you're trying to get a job, or you're trying to present yourself as a thought leader or an influencer in any given topic. Think about those things that are passionate about, where you have unique perspective or unique, passions, and infuse that into your work. And think about, like, what's top of mind or what matters to my intended audience. Be very intentional about that. Find ways that you can create content that is, that you're comfortable with. Not everybody's comfortable with jumping on and doing video right out of the gate. But be open to opportunity, because what's fascinating to me, like, it was about 2 years ago, and I was lamenting to a mutual friend of ours, ironically, that I miss just sitting around talking about sales and leadership. And then I realized I can talk about sales and leadership to anybody in the world at any time. That is the power of technology. And so I started doing that, and I started publishing these conversations, and other people started calling it a podcast, a topic, a title that I refuted because that implied commitment to me of time I didn't have. Sure. But then finally I embraced it as part of my brand, because what it did was it opened up the portal to more conversations like this, where I can learn and I can grow, and I can share those learnings with everyone. And it's amazing where your brand is not going to ultimately look like what you could define it as day one. So don't put so much pressure on yourself to define day one what you want your brand to be or do. Yeah. What's your 3? That's the question. What's your 3? Put that at the heart of what you're doing and continually find ways to infuse your 3 into the current playing field, and you can't lose.
Yeah, start sanding off those rough edges, to use that illustration. We all have rough edges, and I like how you put it, Carson. It's a journey, and getting support along the way. And I encourage sellers especially to go to their best customer, the customer that likes them, and say, here's my 3 words. How am I showing up with those 3 words? And then transversely, go to your hardest customer, the one that's always hard on you, the one you think, oh my God, am I ever going to get through to them? Go to that customer and say, hey, I'm on this personal journey of my brand. Here's my 3 words. And maybe not even give them the 3 words. Just say, what would you describe me as? Where could I work on developing my brand? And you'd be surprised how that conversation with your toughest, hard-nosed customer will all of a sudden start changing that relationship. Oh my God, this is another human being working on getting better. And like that Jeep example, if that person came to me and said, hey, is there some things I can do? What I'm working on my brand, I would say, well, your follow-up, your follow through. I would really like to see you work on that, or whatever that particular person may be looking at. So it takes us further in that journey. Just these three words and just focusing on what's my brand. I mean, it's worked for Microsoft, it's worked for Google, it's worked for US Foods, it's worked for Kraft. So why not take what Simon Sinek does with brands, the why, the how, the what, and actually start applying that to our brand of Richard Vickers of Carson Heady.
So powerfully said. I'm going to say two final thoughts, and then I want you to have the last word. But here's the thing. For everyone watching, you don't have to be perfect in your brand. Just do something. Doing something to personify these things is better than nothing. So just get started and be open to where the journey will take you. And then second, challenge your own norms of what you think brand is all about. I thought a decade ago when I was looking for work that my experience and my results at a prior role were just going to walk me in the door anywhere I wanted to be. I was dead wrong. Because anytime that you're up for a role, you might be one of 100, one of 1,000 people applying to that role. So you've got to think, what is going to give me a higher probability of others to get noticed, to get in the room, to get an interview, to get the conversation, and ultimately get the role? Because there's a lot of factors. Again, you've got to de-risk the decision. And if somebody calls them that they know, that, or whatever the case may be, and they're going to vouch for this person, that's a lower risk decision. So you've got to become the obvious choice. And so the difference between me a decade ago and now is that over time, I've been able to establish, invest in, and nurture a brand that now, I get multiple opportunities that I could pursue in my career every month.
Yeah.
Now, I'm good. I'm not pursuing any of those. But my point is that you want to create a brand that you're proud of, that personifies what you do, but also a mechanism by which to showcase that brand. LinkedIn has worked very well for me. Blogging, YouTube, and a lot of these folks now are leveraging places like TikTok, which I'm just now exploring. But, find these mediums, figure out what you're comfortable with doing, establish that brand, and then find ways to meaningfully and authentically connect as a result of your brand. And you can't go wrong.
Absolutely. And I would just encourage our younger listeners to do a lot of different things, experiment with a lot of different of their strengths until they fine tune their journey into those three words. But for those of us that are on this path, really reach out to mentors and gather people around you. Like Carson is a connector and a collaborator. Get with those people that are connectors and collaborators and say, who do I need to know? Who can help me grow? Who can look or hold up the mirror for me to show me what my three words are or how I'm showing up? And you are really trusting your heart to somebody else. So be careful with who you trust those three words with. And man, good luck on your journey. Because for me, I think knowing your brand, honing your brand, and making your brand a part of who you are, all of a sudden your eyes light up. Like today, I'm being able to communicate. So, man, that's what I am. I'm a communicator. For you, a collaborator, Carson, every time I see one of your podcasts, I see you light up because you love to collaborate with other thought leaders. It's good stuff. All of a sudden, you get energized and plugged in when those three words come to life.
Brilliantly said. Couldn't have said it better myself. And Richard, this was an absolute treat. Thank you for the time. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, we'll do this again, Carson.